Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, reviving the proposal to make ROTC mandatory.
Itong mga bata ngayon, they're bereft of the patriotism and the love of country. Balik sila dito.
Pushing for a stronger and tougher anti-terrorism law.
Just like Iraq, Syria, na maraming inosenteng tao nadadali. Talagang ako nagdarasal to spare us the kind of brutality and cruelty in our country.
Addressing the influx of Chinese tourists and workers and the growing online gaming industry.
Kung akong tatanungin mo bilang National Security Advisor, I have the tendency to look at it as a threat. I'm on the cautious side.
And securing our territory from unannounced Chinese warship visits. Pwersa ng Bayaning Atleta Party Representative Jericho Nograles joins us live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. The Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, or PAGCOR, defends its proposal to create so-called POGO hubs, or self-contained communities for Chinese workers in the online gaming industry. PAGCOR says that this will ensure the protection of Chinese nationals and clarifies that it will not interfere with their freedom. Also, are Chinese warships visiting the country a cause for concern? And how do lawmakers plan to strengthen the anti-terrorism law? And we look into the proposal of reviving the mandatory ROTC. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have PBA Party List Representative Jericho Nograles. Congressman, welcome back to the show. Good to see you again, sir.
Thanks for having me again. And it's a different topic and a different season.
A different Congress.
And a different Congress.
With
That's
the
right.
still Party List representative from the PBA, Sir Pogo. You had expressed some sort of, you were puzzled why POGO hubs seem to be situated very near or around the vicinity of military camps, such as Pasay, Subic, Cubao, etc., sir.
Well, that's right. I think as of late, there have been a lot of growing sentiment against POGOs, and specifically the POGOs being dominantly Chinese. And the location of these POGOs would be in very strategic areas. They would be close to the Senate of the Republic of the Philippines. It's close to the headquarters of the Philippine Air Force, close to the headquarters of the Philippine Navy, as well as the general headquarters of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the headquarters of the Philippine Army and the Philippine National Police. So these strategic distances really raises eyebrows, especially for those who are adept to security concerns. And there has been a lot of noise about it, and people are asking, are they being regulated? And PAGCOR has proposed to create these POGO hubs in order to control the Chinese. But let me put something out. POGO is Philippine Offshore Gaming Offices, and this is not specifically tailored for Chinese alone. So it is open to all nationalities. It just so happens that patok, and it is very popular to the Chinese gambling industry.
Yeah.
Remember that China is against gambling.
Disallows gambling.
It absolutely disallows. It's against the law of China to have Chinese citizens gamble. And then here we are hosting a lot of gambling companies that are supposed to be targeted.
That's exactly what I wanted to get to. Just to put some context to this, China disallows gambling in their country among, I guess in their country, among their citizens. So what attracted these companies to come to the Philippines is that there is a market for gambling, and it is allowed here in the Philippines. So dito ngayon sila lumipat. They set up shop here, right? In fact, the reason that a lot of the Chinese nationals are here, it's because it's a job, supposedly, something that only the Filipinos cannot take because they need to speak possibly Mandarin, sir, in these online gaming activities or companies.
And that's precisely the reason why they come in. And we have two major agencies that actually give out alien employment permits, that is on the side of the Department of Labor, and you have the special working visas, that is on the side of the Bureau of Immigration. And if you look at the numbers, the DOLE has given over 30,000 work permits to the Chinese alone for work in POGOs. And I think the Bureau of Immigration has already released about 78,000, if I'm not mistaken, for Chinese to come in. And that is roughly about 110, 112,000 Chinese nationals working here in the Republic of the Philippines. And if you want to put that in context, that is almost as many Filipinos working in Hong Kong.
What can be done? But first, let's put this out, because this conversation began with you sharing some pictures with some reporters about the locations, rather, of POGO hubs near military camps. Let's put this up on the screen. First of all, sir, in McKinley Hills, there's a POGO there, supposedly in McKinley Hills in Taguig, you know, very close to the Philippine Army. And you also have
McKinley West, right beside the headquarters of the Philippine Army. But then I just have to correct it. These photos are not from me. These are the ones circulating around the internet. And it just so happens that it passed through me and I saw, hey, they have a point here. And so when we did some research, why is it that the POGOs are located near these strategic areas? And it all boils down to our BCDA, or our Bases Conversions and Development Authority. And that's exactly what happened here. As you can see, these used to be part of our bases, which was Fort Bonifacio. But then, piece by piece, Fort Bonifacio and among other bases around our nation have been sold for private enterprise, or long-term leasing and redevelopment. And this is exactly what happened. Now, what we have here are developments for residential, commercial, sometimes industrial as well. And it just so happens that these POGOs, which are generally Chinese, have been developing around areas which are sensitive to our national defense. And it must be talked about. It must be part of the debate on whether or not we should allow continued development. We should allow that bases will be continued to be redeveloped or sold to private entities, or we should allow dominant nationalities to be located near these areas.
You said that you found this. This was forwarded to you by some people, some friends possibly. Did you verify, though? For example, let's go back.
This is definitely confirmed.
Okay.
This is absolutely confirmed. But of course, it would be unfair to put the Philippine flag and the Chinese flag as if you're trying to say that there will be a diplomatic issue here. No, they're not trying to push for a diplomatic issue. But what we are trying to push for is the proper debate, the proper context for us to protect our nation.
So I want to go back to, I want to talk about that, but just to put those other maps that you shared with some of the reporters, which you got yourself. So we showed McKinley Hills and McKinley West. In Cubao, there are POGOs there. In Eastwood and Ortigas, this is, of course, around what you mentioned a while ago, Crame and Aguinaldo. Over and above that, there are POGOs in Resorts World near the vicinity of Villamor Air Base. And there are also POGOs, supposedly, around the Subic area?
That's proposed areas to be developed for POGO, specifically the Grande Island. That is the proposal that came out and is being talked about lately. And if you look at the geography of the Subic Bay, Grande Island is right at the mouth of Subic Bay. And that is an island that is not developed. It makes you wonder, why would you develop that area specifically for POGOs when there are no internet infrastructures there in place? So
because it's an island.
It's a huge development for POGOs in that area. When they can develop elsewhere, there are other PEZA zones for that. So that puts into question again, why there? Why do you want to go there? And of course, the suspicious mind would easily go to the alarmist. The alarmist thought that It is a problem for national security.
But you don't even have to be an alarmist for this because you already have members of the Defense Department, I believe, or the Army saying that these are strategic areas. When you talk about Grande, there are three, sir. Grande, Chiquita, and another one that they're already saying are strategic areas.
The other one, I think, would be in Cavite, facing right in front.
No, there are
of
three in the
in
Subic
the area.
area.
Okay,
Opo.
okay.
So iba po yun. And then what you're talking about is another one, of course, near Sangli, I believe,
Yes,
sir.
that's right.
So here's the thing. Given that you're saying that you got these, they are possibly accurate, would that be right to say?
Oh, they're definitely accurate.
Definitely accurate. What can you do in Congress now?
Well, right now, as a matter of oversight, I think that the Committee on National Defense should look into this. It's just a matter of the committee constituting itself, organizing itself, and meeting about it, and probably calling the National Defense offices to give a presentation to Congress for us to have the proper and official view on the matter.
But is it legal, Congressman, for POGOs to be set up anywhere? There are no prohibitions, sir, as to where they can establish or
the
set up
only
shop.
requirement that I saw that forces POGOs to go to these areas is that each POGO must have an office space of at least 10,000 square meters. So it's a PEZA zone, a highly connected zone, and you need 10,000 square meters. And
Any of each
any
requirement.
of each. So there are about 57 POGO licenses that have been given out. I believe
By
that
PAGCOR.
by PAGCOR, and I believe they're supposed to only give out up to 50. That's another issue that needs to be researched as well. PAGCOR says that only 50 are operational, despite the fact that they gave 57 licenses already.
It's not a question if it's operational, sir, or not. It's
Yes.
a question of how many licenses can you issue out,
And that
right?
comes into play with the Committee on Games and Amusements
So
as well.
dalawa.
So you've got yourself a consolidated and a complicated
Defense.
problem. You have got defense, you've got Committee on Games and Amusements as well, and you even have a question on trade. Why trade? Because POGOs are also sensitive to the economy of Metro Manila. For example, if the POGOs are not here in Metro Manila, our vacancy rate of real estate from office and residential would shoot from 5%, which it is now, up to about 17%. And that is going to be a drastic change in the valuation of real estate, and that will definitely hit our stock market.
And put it simply, sir, that if they are not in, let's say, the Metro Manila area, bababa ulit ang renta, ang
Yes.
pagbenta,
Renta, benta, and everything.
To
That's
rent
right.
and to sell condos or even lots or houses
That's
for
right.
that matter. We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, PBA Party List Representative Jericho Nograles. So, sir, let's try to simplify the discussion. Bawal ang gambling sa China.
Yes.
Pumunta po sila dito.
Yes.
We have about, if statistics are correct or accurate, about 100,000 given visas of
For POGOs,
Chinese
yeah.
nationals for POGO.
Right.
Third is, you have the Bureau of Immigration giving out a different kind of visa and the DOLE issuing out a different kind of visa.
That's right.
Does that confuse you as a lawmaker? I mean, kailan ho ba i-streamline ito, ipagsama-sama, or...
Well, that's a general theme of our government for the past, I don't know, 3 decades, 4 decades, that there are redundancies. And I think that's the reason why the President said in his SONA that he needs to have Congress pass the right-sizing law. That way to slice off these redundancies throughout government. I mean, you look at water. The President talked about passing the Department of Water, asking Congress to pass the Department of Water. And in my research, it turns out there are about 32 different regulators of water. And that brings into mind the big 2 billion peso example against Manila Water, which was fined by the DENR. Because the DENR says, hey, you didn't develop what you were supposed to develop in order to abide by the Clean Water Act. But then, here comes Manila Water saying, yeah, but we asked permission with MWSS and the MWSS told us we're good.
Yeah.
So, sobra, no? If you're doing business in the Philippines or any work, you don't know which regulator to please. And if you please everyone, it's always a horse ahead of the cart kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's a story that we hear. And I think that's something that Congress should start looking into.
Okay. So apart from that, are you agreeable with containing pogos at a particular hub or particular hubs? Is that a good idea?
I think it has its merits, but primarily we should stay away from sensitive areas like the armed forces of the Philippines and our security risk areas.
So
Those
stay
things-
out of the area of the vicinity of Crame, Aguinaldo, Villamor.
Yes,
ganun.
we must be more sensitive to that. I mean, I don't think that this issue was was relevant previously when they developed McKinley West or all of these other developments. It's just more obvious now
Yeah.
because
They're more
of the
of them.
increase of a single nationality there. And if I could quote one of our defense officials, he was saying that there is a presence of military age personnel. And so that is something of concern.
You have National Security Advisor Esperon also saying that the influx of tourists, possibly even Chinese tourists, could end up to be some sort of a security threat. Let's go back to what Secretary Esperon said.
Kung akong tatanungin mo bilang National Security Advisor, I have the tendency to look at it as a threat. I'm on the cautious side because when foreigners, regardless of nationality, come in and their intent is not clear, or when some of them are undocumented or have wrong documentation, false documentation, meaning some of them would come in as tourists and yet end up as workers, then
Again, that should be a concern. Why? Because as anybody, you can come as tourists. And we're not just talking about Chinese tourists. Even other nationalities in other countries can come in as tourists and eventually work.
Well, we do that too in other nations.
That's what I was referring to. I'm
So-
not saying just us or them.
Right.
A lot of people could be guilty of doing that. But let's talk about the situation here in the Philippines. You know, nagkaroon po ng issue on visa upon arrival, or where does it start? Or do we really have to go approach this on a holistic approach, sir?
Well, definitely we have to approach it on a holistic approach. What I'm afraid is that the government has this tendency of forgetting the big picture and being too parochial. As far as POGOs is concerned, I think we should all have a mindset of the big picture here. And,
Which is?
Which is, let's look at it in the sense that we might have sensitive areas that can be compromised due to a high concentration of certain nationalities. And in that case, you know, I was a member, in the 17th Congress, I was a member of the Committee on National Defense. So I'm pretty much exposed to a lot of these sensitivities that are not really brought out into the open, mainly for good reasons.
All right.
But the point is, we must be, as a nation, more sensitive as well. And currently, there is a growing negative sentiment. And in that negative sentiment, I think it's more of the confusion as to, are we, as a government, doing something about the situation?
And as lawmakers, sir, I think you should already, because you're bringing this up, this should be looked into.
Well, definitely it should be looked into, and I think
And
that
maybe you can
the
start
Senate has
setting-
already spoken
Senate.
about looking into the operations of the POGOs, so that is already an exercise of legislative oversight.
Is it a little bit too late, though? Medyo nagtagal
no,
ba
no,
tayo?
of course not.
O nagtagal kayo?
No. It's not too late because if you look at the POGOs per se, PAGCOR as a regulating agency is only primarily giving out first 25 and then 50 and then evaluating it every step.
When does
If we do it correctly, if we manage it correctly, then we can earn some money from it. So I don't know how many billions
Which the
have already come
Finance
in.
Department is already
Precisely.
wanting to do,
Precisely.
that they will be taxed as well. Can you imagine they were not being taxed for quite some time?
That's
All
right. So it's not just the income of these POGOs, but also looking at the workers and the income from the workers as well.
Again, we'll be taking another short break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, PBA Party List Representative Jericho Nograles. Mandatory ROTC. The President mentioned this during his State of the Nation address. You refiled the ROTC Act.
Yes, I refiled the bill that was passed on third and final reading by the House of Representatives on May 20, 2019. So the Senate was not able to act on it. So for lack of legislative time, and then now with the 18th Congress, there are, I think, let me check my notes, 13 different House bills currently filed in Congress for the reviving of the ROTC. And of that 13 different bills, 8 of them are refiled bills of what was passed on third and final reading in the House of Representatives. And I think that this will go through the Committee on Basic Education very quickly, because what we have in Congress is a rule in our House where if a bill was passed on third and final reading, it can, all the previous debates can be put into the record and immediately be passed and go straight into the floor on plenary. The big question is, when will it be passed?
When?
Well,
will it be passed?
Well, first, the Committee
And sorry,
on
the
Basic...
salient points first, sir, is the same. It's grades 11
the salient
and 12.
points, I suppose, would be, it would be mandatory for grade 11 and grade 12 students to go through ROTC training, and that if they don't go through the ROTC training, then they can't have their diploma. They cannot graduate. There are exemptions. The exemptions are those who are not physically or psychologically fit, those who are athletes and part of the varsity teams of their appropriate
Respective
schools,
yeah.
and then a general exemption so long as the Department of National Defense or the Secretary of National Defense as well as the AFP says that person is exempted, then exempted.
So there are 13 bills, 8 from the previous ones. Do these need to be consolidated first,
generally, it needs to be consolidated, but the 8 bills are already carbon copies of each other and that of the exact bill that was filed.
So may 5 na lang.
The 5 ones, of the 5 that are remaining, 4 of them are of the same idea, where it's going to be in grade 11 and grade 12. And then 1 bill is for college level graduation. So that goes to the Committee on Higher and Technical Education. But something that I want to point out, Pinky, is that in the 17th Congress, in the 16th Congress, and even now in the present Congress, all of these ROTC bills did not go through the Committee on National Defense. In my opinion, it should be a national defense matter, not a basic education matter or not a higher education matter, because this deals primarily with the security of our nation. There is an 80-20 principle when it comes to national defense, where 20% of the armed forces must be active personnel. So yan yung nakikita mong mga sundalo who are marching, who are going to war and defending our nation. And then 80% must be part of the reserve. What happened to us now is that it's the absolute opposite. 80% of our armed forces are active personnel and only 20% are reservists. In fact, in Davao City, when you see the reservists falling in formation and assembling, let's say on a Sunday, some of my kids would say, "Oh, Papa, are those veterans?" Kasi hindi na sila mga bata. So these are already what they call, may mga classifications Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 reservists. Sila yung Class 3 reservists na, yung tipong retired na, na hindi na pwede. So what happened to us ever since that we took out mandatory ROTC, our reserve force has actually dwindled.
And syempre, to be frank, tumanda na yon, di ba?
Tumanda
Ganun
na
yun.
talaga. Tumanda na lang. Ako, I am one of the last batches of ROTC. I think I took up ROTC in 1999 and year 2000.
Okay.
And ROTC was already discontinued in 2002, at least in its mandatory.
Just very, very quickly, sir, abuse, deaths due to and corruption. How are there safeguards in place? Although we don't have a lot of time really to talk about
Well,
this.
basically, in anything in government, there's always the same problem, and ROTC is not spared. So all we have to do is just be vigilant and make sure that it will not be abused.
All right. Thank you to PBA Party List Representative Jericho Nograles. Sir, maraming salamat po sa inyo. We'll see you again, sir. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.